With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Of course, I'm your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So the Commanders continue to add low-level depth to the roster. This is what I told you should be looking for as we continue to head towards the draft. Low-level one-year signings to add more depth, round out the roster, give more competition heading to camp. Again, there are no guarantees to anyone who signs a one-year deal with this team. That includes guys that were brought back like F.A. Obata and Jamison Crowder. Nobody's safe, and that's what I've been trying to convey to you this entire time is nobody's safe on this roster outside of those guys that have established themselves as premier NFL talents. The Terry McLaurins, the Daron Paynes, the Jonathan Allens. Jeremy Reeves is safe on this roster as an elite all-pro, Pro Bowl special teams player. And then the guys that have been high-level draft picks are safe, right? Last year's first-round pick, 2 years ago's first-round pick, Jahan Dotson. Last year's first-round pick, Emmanuel Forbes Jr. Sam Cosmi is safe. Those guys are safe. The guys that we know can play at this level. But the guys like De'Ami Brown who have not established themselves going into the final year of his rookie contract, he's not safe. Benjamin St-Juste, not safe here, right? Like these guys who are going into the final year of their rookie contracts, the guy that they signed to a one-year deal could take a guy who has 1 year left on their rookie deal spot. That's what I'm trying to convey to you. So while it's highly unlikely that a Benjamin St-Juste doesn't make this roster, it's not out of the realm of possibility because they have no ties to Benjamin St-Juste and they have no issues moving on from a Benjamin St-Juste or a De'Ami Brown a year prior to them being gone anyway in free agency next year. So again, the likelihood is those things will not transpire, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And adding guys like Olamide Zaccheaus and Jeremy McNichols kind of hammers that point home. Now, I already told you, this roster is going to be one of those rosters where everything's, to me, within play here. So I think Washington's going to keep 6 receivers. I think they're going to keep 4 running backs. But at some point, you can't keep 4 and 5 and 6 of everything. So you got to trim off some fat somewhere. Because I told you, I think we're going to keep 3 quarterbacks on this roster as well. So if you're going to do that, you can't keep 4 tight ends and 4 running backs and 6 receivers. You got to trim off fat somewhere. So it's hard to say where that fat is going to be trimmed off at right now. And I think that's what bringing in all of these guys is for. Because you don't know if you're keeping 6 receivers versus 4 running backs. Or you're keeping 6 receivers and 4 running backs, but only 3 tight ends. Like, we'll figure that out as we get to camp and you get into the preseason and you see what positions are stronger than others and where you need to keep a guy versus cutting a guy loose, knowing you can get him back on the practice squad versus knowing if you cut this guy, he's too talented, someone's going to sweep him up and you won't get him back onto your practice squad, so you have to keep him. So it becomes a numbers game, but you're putting yourself in a position. And once again, I don't think these signings here of Olamide Zaccheaus, wide receiver who was with the Eagles last year, but really primarily spent most of his NFL career and made a name for himself in this league as an Atlanta Falcon. And again, you know where the connection is there. It's twofold. One, Dan Quinn knows Olamide Zaccheaus very well. He was the guy that gave Olamide Zaccheaus his shot in the NFL as an undrafted rookie out of UVA. But also there's the connection to Brian Johnson, our pass game coordinator, who was in Philadelphia last year, same as Olamide Zaccheaus. So we were told by Adam Peters that a lot of the moves of the guys that they brought in were moves of guys that someone on the staff had a connection with. Somebody on the staff knew of that player, could vouch for that player, and that's why that player is here. Same could be said for Jeremy McNichols. This is a guy I can recollect back far enough to when this guy came out of Boise State. I remember watching Hard Knocks that summer when he was drafted out of the 5th round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I remember that because Jameis Winston was with Tampa Bay, and they really followed Jameis Winston a lot, as they should. You know, he's a character that year on Hard Knocks. And McNichols was one of the rookies that they followed during that season's show, and he didn't perform well in camp and ultimately got cut. And I just remember him making a decision that I thought really, and we don't know how these things go, but I remember in the moment thinking he made the wrong decision. He got in his feelings because things didn't go well and he didn't make the team and he thought he should have made the roster and he didn't make the roster and they cut him. But they told him, Jason Light told him, we want to bring you back on the practice squad. And to me, when a team drafts you and you don't make their roster, but you're going to have an opportunity to be on their practice squad, unless you're getting an opportunity to go be on another team's active roster, which I think he ultimately did. Now, initially, it wasn't that opportunity. He just went to San Francisco looking for an opportunity. They didn't guarantee him a roster spot, but I think he ultimately did end up on that 49ers roster, if I'm not mistaken. But initially, he was just going to the 49ers practice squad. He wasn't going to their active roster, which I always think is a mistake by players. When you're drafted somewhere and that team is giving you an opportunity to stay there because they know you, they drafted you, that means they like you. So there are things there that you can do and improve upon that may give you an opportunity later on down the line to make their team, versus going somewhere, starting fresh. And maybe sometimes that is the best thing. But for the most part, with me, if I'm a player, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of I know this staff, they know me, I'm comfortable here, I've put down roots here. This is where I want to try to cut my teeth in the league if I can, if at all possible. Now, if another opportunity presents itself down the road, so be it. But he decided to go to San Francisco, and I just remember thinking in the moment it was the wrong decision. But ultimately, that's how he ends up here, honestly, is because of him going to San Francisco. That was the first year that Adam Peters, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch and company were in, or second year, excuse me, they were in San Francisco. He goes to the 49ers, and then he actually has a second stint with the 49ers last season. I think he probably played his most football in the NFL, though, with the Tennessee Titans. There was a little stretch there for like maybe 2 seasons or so where he was more of a third down back with the Tennessee Titans, caught the football a little bit, got a few handoffs, things of that nature. There was that one year Derrick Henry was really banged up, and they needed other guys to step up. I remember they had the former Houston Texans, Texas running back, Deontay Foreman, played really well. That's what really rejuvenated his career and got him all the opportunities that he's seen over the last few years. And McNichols was another guy in that mix during that stretch that got some touches. And I think that kind of gave him a chance to stick around in the league. And hence, here he is because of his relationship with Adam Peters and the like. And so he's getting an opportunity here. But again, he's nothing more to me than a special teams guy. We really, truly don't have a special teams back. If you look at the roster, and I was looking at it very closely last week at running back in particular, which is why in my mock draft, I selected a running back, because we really, truly don't have a special teams running back. And generally, one of your running backs needs to play special teams. Now, Chris Rodriguez can do that and has done that did do that for us last year a little bit, but that's not something that naturally comes to him. McNichols is more of a guy that has had to play special teams in his NFL career, and if he's going to stick around on the roster, he's going to cut his teeth more likely than not playing special teams. And if he gets any offensive carries, that's a bonus. But for him, if he wants to stay in the league, he's going to have to play special teams. I mean, same could be said probably for Chris Rodriguez Jr. If he's going to want to stay in the league, he's going to have to play special teams as well. But when you look at our roster, Brian Robinson Jr. is not playing special teams, and nor is Austin Eckler. Somebody's got to play special teams if you're going to make this football team. If we're going to keep 4 backs, then those final 2 running backs, one in particular has to play special teams, but both of those running backs have to, because if you're keeping 4 running backs, that means you're cutting off fat somewhere else, whether that's linebacker or it's corner or receiver. But that would be another position where a guy would be playing special teams. So both of those running backs probably have to play special teams. One in particular. So McNichols comes in here. He's going to compete. He's going to be a guy that, again, I don't see really impacting the depth chart all that much. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's going to make this team, if we're being honest with one another, especially if they draft a running back. If they don't draft a running back, then Jeremy McNichols may ultimately end up being on this roster this season. More likely than not in a practice squad capacity, but still, he'll end up being around. But if they draft a running back, I can't see a way in which Jeremy McNichols ends up on this football team. The only way he has a path to even having a shot is if they don't draft a back. And I think that's what this is insurance for. Just in case, in the event they don't draft a running back, the guys that they like in this draft aren't available at the time of their selections where they think it's good value. Then they pass on the position altogether in the draft. You have a guy already. Instead of waiting post-draft and McNichols may already be swept up by a team, you get him now, ensure that he's here, and if you get the running back in the draft, then you can cut Jeremy McNichols, and there's no harm, no foul, right? That's kind of how I see McNichols working out. Now, Olamide Zaccheaus, on the other hand, to me is more intriguing because he can actually play. He's got NFL experience, and he's got somebody here on this roster that's in his corner in Dan Quinn who knows he can play, knows he can produce, and will give him an opportunity here if he comes in and works and looks like the Olamide Zaccheaus that he remembers in Atlanta. And I don't see why he wouldn't be able to come in here and do that. He's still relatively young, only 26 years old. He can play football. I'm a big OZ fan. I've always been a Olamide Zaccheaus fan. Going back to his days in Atlanta. I hated that he was with the Eagles last year because I actually thought he was going to be a bigger part of the offense than he was last year. He had some moments. That Tampa Bay Buccaneers game stood out. Obviously, he had a big catch against Buffalo in that dramatic overtime victory there. So he had some plays, some moments last year, but they were few and far between. I thought he would be more impactful with that offense last year. But you bring him in here, and to me, immediately, he's probably the third best receiver on the team right now, if we're being honest. But again, fourth best receiver. No, I said that right because it's Jahan and Terry, and then it's Diami, it's Jamison Crowder, and then it's Olamide Zaccheaus if you're looking at five guys. And I think you could draft another guy, and that'll give you six. Now, don't forget about Mitchell Tinsley. Don't forget about the rest of the guys that may be hanging around that were here last year. And so, be cautious and wary of those guys. Don't just push them to the side. But Olamide Zaccheaus, to me, is probably more consistent than Dyami Brown is at this current juncture. But that said, I still don't see Olamide Zaccheaus pushing Dyami Brown out of the mix. I look at this as more of competition for Jamison Crowder now. The thing for Crowder, and the reason why I don't see Crowder going anywhere is, one, they re-signed Crowder. They went out of their way to bring him back. But two, and this is the most important part, Crowder offers you special teams value. His ability to return punts last year gave us a little spark. I mean, it was initial, it was impactful, and then it went away. He started trying to make big plays. He started running backwards. It didn't go well. But because of that one return against Atlanta, you had that in the back of your mind that, hey, at any moment, Jameson could bust one. So I think that gives him a leg up on any of the other guys that are competing for the back end of the roster wide receiver spots. And Dyami also plays a mean special teams. Diami's one of the better special teams wide receivers on this team currently. So if you're going to come in here and try to take his spot, you're going to have to play extremely good special teams. And again, I don't know if those two are competing for the same spot. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a long shot that Dyami Brown doesn't end up in this roster. We just aren't talented enough for a guy like Dyami, who's on the last year of his deal anyway, to be pushed out of here. Same thing with Benjamin St. Juste, but just keep that in the back of your mind. If push comes to shove, it might be one of the guys that they chose instead of one of the guys they inherited, and these are the things that you have to keep in mind. But I could see Olamide Zaccheaus ending up on this roster. I don't know if this is a token signing. Again, much like running back, I expect them to explore wide receiver in the draft, add a receiver, and that would give you four guys that are definitely on the roster. Three guys that are definitely on the roster, and then I think you got another three guys that are going to be competing to be on the roster. But right now, there's only two guys at receiver that are guaranteed to be here. Just like at running back, there are only two running backs that are guaranteed to be here. I like to think that Chris Rodriguez is going to be here, but you just never know. They didn't draft him, and it's not like he was a second-round pick. He was a sixth-round pick, was Chris Rodriguez Jr., so you can easily move on from him if you don't love him. Meanwhile, with Diami, he was a third round pick, final year of his deal, similar to Benjamin St. Juste. I don't see them moving on from those guys. No need to do that when you're not that talented of a roster anyway. But again, as I've mentioned before, adding guys in the draft will make it very interesting as they start to shape and mold this roster. Guys are going to compete, and that's what these signings represent. More competition at skill positions on the offensive side of the football. I look for them to add at tight end, running back, and receiver in the draft, and that will add more competition to the mix. Obviously, if they draft those players, they're more likely to make the team than guys that were here prior to them getting here. So always keep that in mind as well. But to me, of the two signings, the more impactful one is Olamide Zaccheaus. He's the guy that I think has a real shot at making this football team. Meanwhile, McNichols is an insurance policy to me. They don't draft running back. They have another guy here that can compete at the running back position as they go into the offseason program and into camp. Meanwhile, if they draft a running back, I see McNichols as a last guy in, first guy out type of scenario. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Also, remember, we're live tonight. All right, we'll be live tonight talking about the Drake May Pro Day. You know, I got to make up for lost time. So we'll talk about that and some other things that I've been thinking about over the weekend that I want to bring to you. Some, ideas and some things that have kind of got into my brain a bit about the quarterback position, among other topics. So we'll explore those tonight, and then we'll really start to dive into some other aspects of things as we really start to head towards, it's April now, so you understand it. It's really real. Like, the draft is in 24 days. So things are about to really heat up. Those official 30 visits are going to start to heat up. I'm going to be doing videos on those almost on a daily basis now as those start to change over the next couple of weeks as Washington gets really, really active in that market as well. So you're going to start hearing from me a lot in that regard as well. But we will be live tonight going over that Drake May Pro Day and what it may mean for the Commanders at the number 2 overall pick. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. And I'll see you hopefully later on tonight.
LouieTeeNetwork.